The rain came down in sheets, drumming against the car roof like a warning. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, as the wipers struggled to keep up with the storm tearing through the Adirondacks. This was supposed to be a carefree weekend, a chance to escape the suffocating weight of my life in Syracuse, but the road to my friend Sarah's cabin felt like it was leading me straight into the unknown. My name is Elena Harper, and at 22 I was drowning in the chaos of my final year at college exams, a failing relationship with my girlfriend, Jess, and parents who barely spoke to me after I came out. Sarah, my best friend since high school, had insisted I join her at her family's cabin for a weekend of hiking, campfire stories, and forgetting the world. "It's just what you need, Elle," she'd said, her voice bright over the phone. I'd agree, desperate for a break, picturing cozy nights and laughter. But as I pulled up to the cabin, tires crunching on wet gravel, the silhouette in the doorway wasn't Sarah. It was a woman, tall, poised, with silver-streaked hair glowing under the porch light. My stomach flipped. This had to be Catherine, Sarah's mother. I'd never met her, but Sarah's stories painted her as a force of nature, brilliant, intimidating, and fiercely protective. Why was she here alone? I stepped out of the car, rain soaking my jacket, and forced a smile. "Hi, I'm Elena," I called, my voice nearly lost in the storm. She stepped forward, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Catherine," she said, her voice low and warm like a fire crackling in the distance. "Sarah's running late. Come in before you catch your death." Her words were kind, but there was something in her gaze, sharp, searching, that made me feel seen in a way I wasn't ready for. Inside, the cabin was a haven of warmth, all polished wood and soft lamplight. A fire roared in the stone fireplace, casting flickering shadows across the room. Catherine handed me a towel, her fingers brushing mine for a fraction of a second, sending a jolt through me. I told myself it was nothing, just the chill of the rain. "Sarah said she'll be here by morning," Catherine explained, pouring tea from a kettle. "Some last-minute work thing. You're stuck with me tonight." She smiled, and it was disarming, like the sun breaking through clouds. I mumbled a thank you, my cheeks burning, and sat on the couch, clutching the mug like a lifeline. We talked for hours. It started innocently: college, my art history major, her work as a freelance editor. But the conversation shifted like a river changing course. She asked about my life, my dreams, my fears, and I found myself spilling everything. The fights with Jess, the way my parents' silence cut deeper than their words ever had, the loneliness that clung to me like damp clothes. Catherine listened, her eyes never leaving mine, her responses thoughtful and laced with a quiet empathy that made my chest ache. She shared, too, her divorce from Sarah's father, the years she'd spent rebuilding herself, the way she'd learned to embrace her own strength. There was a raw honesty in her words, a vulnerability that felt like a gift. By the time the fire died down, the air between us had changed. It was heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. I caught her watching me, her gaze lingering a moment too long, and my heart raced. "You should get some sleep," she said softly, standing to clear the mugs. But as she passed me, her hand brushed my shoulder, and I froze, the touch igniting something deep inside me. I told myself I was imagining it. She was Sarah's mother, for God's sake. Older, wiser, untouchable. Yet, as I lay in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this weekend was about to unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cabin's windows, painting the lake outside in shades of gold and blue. "Sarah still wasn't here, delayed by a canceled flight," she texted. I should have been disappointed, but a part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, was relieved. Catherine was in the kitchen, humming softly as she cooked breakfast. The sight of her, hair loose and catching the light, made my breath hitch. "Sleep okay?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. Her smile was easy, but there was a question in her eyes, like she was testing the waters. We spent the day together, hiking a trail near the lake. The forest was alive with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds, but all I could focus on was her laughter, the way she pointed out a deer in the distance, the way her hand steadied me when I tripped over a root. Every touch, every glance felt like a spark, and I was terrified of what it meant. I'd never felt this way before, not even with Jess. This was different, deeper, more dangerous. By the time we returned to the cabin, I was a mess of nerves, torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay forever. That evening, as we sat by the fire again, The tension was unbearable. Catherine was telling a story about her college days, her voice soft and melodic. When she paused, her eyes meeting mine. "Elena," she said, her tone serious. "You're carrying so much. You don't have to." Her words hit like a punch, unraveling the walls I'd built around my heart. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I was fine, but instead I found myself crying raw, ugly sobs that I couldn't stop. She moved closer, her hand resting on mine, and I didn't pull away. "You're enough," she whispered, and in that moment I believed her. The firelight danced across Catherine's face, highlighting the gentle lines of experience etched into her skin. Her hand stayed on mine, warm and steady, anchoring me as my tears slowed. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but the weight of her words, "You're enough," hung in the air, too sacred to disturb. I pulled my hand back, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid of what it meant to let it linger. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, wiping my eyes. "I don't usually fall apart like this." Catherine shook her head, her expression soft but firm. "Don't apologize for feeling, Elena. It's what makes you human." Her voice was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of my own self-doubt. I wanted to ask her how she did it, though she carried herself with such grace after everything she'd been through, but the words wouldn't come. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of quiet moments. We played a board game she found in a dusty cabinet, laughing over her ruthless strategy and my hopeless attempts to keep up. But every laugh, every shared glance, felt like it was building something between us, a fragile, unspoken thing that scared me as much as it thrilled me. When I went to bed, I lay awake, replaying the day, her voice, her touch. I told myself it was just a crush, a fleeting thing born of loneliness and too much time together. But deep down I knew it was more. The next morning, Sarah finally arrived, bursting through the door with her usual chaotic energy. "Elena, Mom, sorry I'm late," she called, dropping her bag and hugging me tightly. I hugged her back, grateful for her presence but acutely aware of Catherine watching us from the kitchen. Sarah's arrival should have grounded me, reminded me of why I was here, but instead it felt like an intrusion. I hated myself for it. Sarah was my best friend, the one who'd been there through every heartbreak, every fight with my parents. But all I could think about was the woman standing 10 feet away, stirring coffee with a quiet smile. The day was a whirlwind of Sarah's plans: kayaking on the lake, a picnic by the shore, endless chatter about her new job in Boston. I tried to keep up, to be the friend she expected, but my eyes kept drifting to Catherine. She joined us for the picnic, sitting cross-legged on a blanket, her laughter mingling with the breeze. Every time our eyes met, my heart stuttered. I caught Sarah watching me once, her brow furrowing, and panic shot through me. Did she notice? Did she see the way I looked at her mother? I forced a laugh, diving into a story about a disastrous art project to distract her, but the guilt gnawed at me. That night, Sarah suggested a movie marathon, piling blankets on the couch and pulling out a stack of old DVDs. Catherine sat on the other side of me, her presence a quiet hum in the back of my mind. Halfway through the second movie, Sarah fell asleep, her head lolling against my shoulder. The room was dark except for the flickering screen, and I felt Catherine shift beside me. "She's out like a light," she whispered, her voice low and intimate. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The air felt thick, electric, and when her knee brushed mine, I didn't move away. "Elena," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the movie's soundtrack. I turned to face her, and the look in her eyes, raw, unguarded, made my chest tighten. "I see you," she said, and it wasn't just words. It was a recognition, a mirror held up to every part of me I tried to hide. I wanted to lean into her, to close the distance between us, but Sarah's weight against my shoulder stopped me. This was wrong. She was Sarah's mother. She was 20 years older than me. She was everything I shouldn't want. I excused myself, mumbling something about needing air, and slipped outside to the porch. The night was cool, the stars sharp against the sky, and I leaned against the railing, trying to steady my racing heart. The door creaked behind me, and I knew it was her before she spoke. "Are you okay?" Catherine asked, stepping closer. Her voice was gentle, but there was an edge to it, like she was holding something back. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I'm confused." It was the closest I could get to the truth without breaking apart. She didn't push, didn't ask for more. She just stood there, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence, and it was enough to make me want to cry again. "You don't have to have all the answers," she said finally. "Sometimes it's okay to just feel." I looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the same uncertainty in her eyes that I felt in my own heart. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. We stood there in silence, the night wrapping around us like a cocoon. I wanted to ask her what this was, what we were doing, but the words felt too big, too dangerous. Instead, I let myself lean into the moment, into the possibility of something I couldn't yet name. When we went back inside, Sarah was still asleep, oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Catherine's face, heard her voice, felt the weight of her words. I was falling and I didn't know how to stop. The next morning, the cabin felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. Sarah was up early, blasting music and making pancakes, her energy a stark contrast to the quiet turmoil inside me. Catherine was outside, splitting wood for the fire, her movements precise and strong. I watched her through the window, my heart a tangled mess of longing and guilt. I needed to talk to her, to understand what was happening. But Sarah's presence made it impossible. The day passed in a haze of group activities, hiking, card games, Sarah's endless stories. I played along, laughing at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time Catherine's eyes met mine, I felt a pull, like gravity drawing me closer. Sarah noticed something was off. I could tell by the way she kept asking if I was okay, her brow creasing with concern. "You're so quiet, Elle," she said during lunch, nudging my shoulder. "Everything good?" I nodded, forcing a smile, but the lie tasted bitter. That afternoon, Sarah suggested we go swimming in the lake. The water was cold, the kind of cold that shocked your system awake, and for a moment it was a relief to focus on something physical. Sarah splashed me, laughing, and I splashed back, trying to lose myself in the moment. Catherine watched from the shore, her expression unreadable, and I felt her gaze like a weight. When we climbed out, shivering and wrapping ourselves in towels, she handed me one, her fingers lingering on mine for a heartbeat longer than necessary. My skin burned where she touched me, and I looked away, afraid Sarah would see. Dinner was tense, at least for me. Sarah chattered on, oblivious, while Catherine and I stole glances across the table. Every time our eyes met, it was like a secret pass between us, fragile and forbidden. After dinner, Sarah suggested a walk to watch the sunset, but I begged off, claiming a headache. I needed space, needed to think. Catherine stayed behind too, saying she had dishes to do, and the moment Sarah was out of sight, the cabin felt too small, the air too thick. I found her in the kitchen, scrubbing a pan with more focus than it needed. "Catherine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She froze, her hands still in the soapy water, and turned to face me. "Elena," she said, and there was a question in her voice, a hesitation that mirrored my own. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. "What is this?" I asked, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "What's happening between us?" She set the pan down, drying her hands on a towel, her movements slow, deliberate. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice raw. "But I feel it too." Those words shattered something inside me, a wall I'd been clinging to. I wanted to close the distance between us, to touch her, to know if this was real, but the fear of what it would mean stopped me. "This is complicated," she continued, her eyes searching mine. "Sarah, your age, my Agi, it's not simple." I nodded, my throat tight. She was right, but it didn't make the ache in my chest any less real. We stood there, inches apart, the silence stretching until it was almost unbearable. Then she reached out, her hand brushing my cheek, and I leaned into it, closing my eyes. It was just a moment, but it felt like everything. The sound of the front door opening snapped us apart, Sarah's voice calling out as she returned. Catherine stepped back, her expression unreadable, and I turned away, my heart racing. Sarah didn't notice anything, thank God, but the guilt was suffocating. I was betraying my best friend, falling for her mother, and I didn't know how to stop. That night I couldn't sleep again. I slipped out to the porch, needing the cold air to clear my head. Catherine was already there, sitting on the steps staring at the stars. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Can't sleep?" she asked, her voice soft. I shook my head, sitting beside her, close enough that our shoulders brushed. We didn't speak for a long time, just sat in the quiet, the night alive with the sound of crickets and the distant lapping of the lake. I've never felt like this before, I said finally, my voice barely audible. Not with Jess, not with anyone. She turned to me, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Neither have I, she said, and the honesty in her voice broke me open. I wanted to kiss her, to throw caution to the wind, but the weight of Sarah, of reality, held me back. Instead, I reached for her hand, and she let me, her fingers intertwining with mine. It was enough for now, but I knew it couldn't last. The weekend was slipping away, and with it, the fragile bubble Catherine and I had created. Sarah's presence was a constant reminder of the line we were towing, the one we couldn't cross without consequences. But every moment alone with Catherine, every glance, every touch made it harder to care about the rules. The next morning, Sarah announced she wanted to hike to a waterfall a few miles away. It's the perfect way to end the weekend, she said, her enthusiasm infectious. I agreed, hoping the physical exertion would distract me from the storm in my heart. Catherine came along, her presence a quiet comfort and a torment all at once. The trail was steep, the air crisp with the scent of pine, and Sarah led the way, chattering about her plans for grad school. I lagged behind, my eyes drawn to Catherine, who walked with a steady grace, her hair catching the sunlight filtering through the trees. At the waterfall, Sarah stripped down to her swimsuit and dove in, shrieking at the cold. I hesitated, but Catherine's quiet "go on," and the warmth in her smile pushed me forward. The water was freezing, but it was a relief, a shock to pull me out of my head. Sarah splashed me, laughing, and for a moment I was just her friend again, not the mess of emotions I'd become. But when I climbed out, dripping and shivering, Catherine was there with a towel, her eyes soft and knowing. "You're braver than you think," she said, and I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I was terrified of what I felt for her. But Sarah's voice calling me back broke the moment. That evening, back at the cabin, Sarah got a call from work. "I have to take this," she said, stepping outside, leaving Catherine and me alone. The air shifted, heavy with possibility. I was sitting on the couch pretending to read when Catherine sat beside me, closer than necessary. "Elena," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk about this." I nodded, my heart in my throat. "I know," I said, "but I don't know what to do. I don't want to hurt Sarah, but I can't stop feeling this way." She reached for my hand, her touch steadying me. "I don't either," she admitted, "but we have to be careful. This could break her." Her words were a knife, cutting through the haze of my emotions. She was right. Sarah was my best friend, the one who'd stood by me when my world fell apart. But the thought of walking away from Catherine, of pretending this didn't exist, was unbearable. Before I could respond, Sarah came back, her face lit up with excitement. "Good news. I got the promotion," she announced, and we celebrated, popping open a bottle of wine and toasting her success. But as the night wore on, the weight of what Catherine and I hadn't said settled over me. I caught her watching me, her eyes filled with the same longing I felt, and it was torture. When Sarah went to bed, I lingered in the living room hoping Catherine would stay. She did. We didn't speak at first, just sat by the fire, the crackling logs the only sound. Then she turned to me, her expression raw. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I've spent my life being careful, doing the right thing. But you make me want to be reckless." Her words hit like a wave, pulling me under. I leaned closer, my heart pounding, and she didn't pull away. Our lips were inches apart when the floor creaked upstairs, and we froze the moment shattered. Sarah was still awake. We pulled back, the air thick with what we hadn't done. "We can't," Catherine whispered, her voice breaking. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. She was right, but it didn't make it hurt any less. I went to bed, my heart a battlefield of want and guilt. And when I finally slept, I dreamed of her touch, her voice, the life we could never have. The next morning, the final day of the weekend, was quiet. Sarah was packing, chattering about the drive back to Syracuse, while I moved through the motions, my mind elsewhere. Catherine was distant, her smiles polite but guarded, and it felt like a wall had gone up between us. I wanted to tear it down, to tell her I didn't care about the consequences, but I couldn't. Not with Sarah right there, oblivious to the storm we'd created. As we loaded the car, Catherine pulled me aside, her hand on my arm. "Elena," she said, her voice low, "whatever happens, you've changed me." Her words were a gift and a wound, And I wanted to say something back to tell her she changed me too, but Sarah called my name and the moment was gone. I hugged Catherine goodbye, her warmth lingering on my skin, and got in the car, my heart breaking with every mile we drove away. Back in Syracuse, the world felt gray, like the color had drained out of it. I went through the motions classes studying, avoiding Jess's calls, but Catherine was everywhere, in every quiet moment, every song on the radio. Sarah noticed my distance, her texts growing more concerned, but I couldn't tell her the truth. How could I? I'd fallen for her mother, and the weight of that secret was crushing me. Weeks passed and I tried to move on. I threw myself into my art, painting feverishly, trying to capture the way Catherine's eyes had looked in the firelight, the curve of her smile. But every stroke felt like a confession, and I hid the canvases in my closet, afraid of what they revealed. I told myself it was over, that the weekend was a fluke, a moment of weakness. But then Catherine texted me. It was simple, just a "how are you?" But it was enough to unravel me. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling, and typed a reply before I could stop myself. We started texting daily, small messages at first, books we were reading, funny stories, but it quickly became more. She told me about her fears, her dreams, the way she felt alive when we talked. I told her about my paintings, my doubts, the way I missed her. It was dangerous, reckless, but I couldn't stop. One night she called. Her voice was a balm, soothing the ache I'd carried since the cabin. "Elena," she said, "I can't stop thinking about you." My heart stopped. "I can't either," I admitted, and we talked until dawn, laying our hearts bare. We knew it was impossible, Sarah, the age gap, the world, but for those hours it didn't matter. We were just two people, falling in spite of everything. I knew I had to see her again. I told Sarah I was visiting a cousin in Albany, a lie that tasted like ash, and drove to Catherine's apartment in the city. When she opened the door, her eyes lit up and I was lost. We didn't speak at first, just stood there, the air electric. Then she pulled me into her arms and I kissed her, the world falling away. It was everything, soft, fierce, perfect. We spent the day together, talking, laughing, stealing moments we knew we couldn't keep. But reality crept in. Sarah called while I was there and I froze, guilt crashing over me. Catherine saw it, her face falling. "We can't keep doing this," she said, her voice breaking. "Not like this." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. She was right, but it felt like losing a part of myself. We agreed to stop, to protect Sarah, to protect ourselves. I drove back to Syracuse, my heart in pieces. Months later, I saw Catherine at Sarah's graduation. She was there, radiant and composed, and our eyes met across the crowd. There was no anger, no regret, just a quiet understanding. We'd loved, and it had been real, even if it couldn't last. I graduated, moved to New York City, started painting again. My work was different now, bolder, infused with the courage Catherine had given me. I came out to Sarah, not about her mother, but about who I was, and she hugged me, her love unwavering. Years later, I got a package in the Mila book of poetry, with a note from Catherine. "You're still enough," it read, and I smiled through tears. We never spoke again, but she was with me in every brushstroke, every moment I chose to live bravely. Our love had been a fleeting wildfire, burning bright and brief, but it had changed me forever. It taught me that love in all its forms is worth it, even when it hurts. Especially then. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.